In the silence of the high desert, swallowed by the relentless green of the jungle, and submerged beneath the cold, dark waves of the ocean, lie the silent sentinels of a forgotten age. They are vast, enigmatic, and they defy simple explanation. These are not just ruins. They are the ghostly imprints of entire civilizations that our history books have failed to account for. They are profound questions, etched into the very landscape of our planet, challenging the timeline of human ingenuity that we have so carefully constructed. The story of civilization, as we are often told, is a comforting one. It is a linear progression from primitive hunter-gatherers to the first farmers, and then a slow, steady climb through the Bronze and Iron Ages towards the world we know today. It is an orderly, familiar narrative of gradual development where tools and techniques evolved over millennia. This is the bedrock of modern archaeology, the accepted framework through which we view our collective past. And yet, scattered across the globe are the uncomfortable truths that refuse to fit this neat story. Megalithic stones, weighing hundreds of tons, quarried and moved by unknown means, then fitted together with a precision that modern technology would struggle to replicate. Complex astronomical alignments built by cultures that were supposedly devoid of such sophisticated knowledge. Structures that carbon dating suggests are thousands of years older than the very civilizations credited with building them. These are not isolated curiosities. They are a global phenomenon. They are the artifacts that whisper of an impossibility. What if the linear story we've been told is not wrong, but simply incomplete? What if there is a lost chapter in the human story, a forgotten episode of immense technological and cultural achievement that was wiped from the memory of the world by some great cataclysm? These ruins may be its only surviving evidence. They are the footprints of phantoms, the architectural echoes of cultures so advanced and so ancient that their existence forces us to reconsider the very definition of prehistory. We are about to embark on a journey to the edge of accepted knowledge, to walk among these impossible structures and ask the forbidden questions. We will examine the evidence that mainstream archaeology often overlooks and explore the theories that dare to suggest a past far stranger and more magnificent than we can imagine. Our journey does not begin in the familiar lands of Egypt or Mesopotamia, but in a place far older, a place that stands as a silent rebuke to the orthodox timeline, challenging everything we thought we knew about the dawn of humanity itself.
That very dawn is a place you can find on a map. It lies in southeastern Anatolia, in modern-day Turkey, cresting a barren, rounded hilltop that overlooks the vast Mesopotamian plain. The name of this place is Göbekli Tepe, the Potbelly Hill. For thousands of years, it was just that, an unassuming rise in the earth, hiding a secret of unimaginable significance. To stand there today, under the sweeping, protective roof built by modern archaeologists, is to stand at the epicenter of a revolution, a quiet, seismic shift in the story of human civilization. For buried beneath that hill for over 10 millennia was not a tomb, not a settlement, but a cathedral from the Stone Age, a temple built before time itself. Before its discovery and excavation, led by the visionary German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt in 1994, the timeline of human history was clear and undisputed. Humanity lived as scattered bands of hunter-gatherers, nomadic and primitive, until the invention of agriculture around 10,000 years ago. This agricultural revolution, we were taught, was the great catalyst. It allowed for settled villages, food surpluses, social hierarchies, and eventually complex religion and monumental architecture. First came the farm, then came the town, and only then came the temple. It was a neat, logical progression. Göbekli Tepe incinerated that timeline, Carbon dating of the site was conclusive, and the results were an archaeological bombshell. The oldest layers of Göbekli Tepe were constructed around 9600 BCE. That is an astonishing 11,600 years ago. To put that into perspective, this site is over 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It is 7,000 years older than the oldest pyramids of Giza. It was built in a time before humanity had invented pottery, before we had smelted metal, before the domestication of most animals, and crucially, a full millennium before the widespread adoption of agriculture. The people who built this were, by all conventional definitions, Stone Age hunter-gatherers. And what they built is nothing short of breathtaking. The site consists of a series of massive, circular enclosures. At the center of these circles stand pairs of enormous, T-shaped monolithic pillars, some reaching over 18 feet in height and weighing up to 20 tons. These central pillars are surrounded by smaller, similar pillars embedded in stone walls. And they are not blank stones. They are covered, almost obsessively, with intricate, high-relief carvings of animals, snarling foxes, boars, spiders, scorpions, and graceful cranes. There are abstract symbols, human arms carved in relief along the sides of the pillars, and even a stunning, fully 3D sculpture of a predatory animal, perhaps a lion or leopard, found within one of the enclosures. This is not the crude scratching of a primitive people. This is a sophisticated, stylized, and powerful artistic tradition executed on a monumental scale. Klaus Schmidt's groundbreaking conclusion was that this was a cathedral on a hill, a sacred pilgrimage site for the scattered hunter-gatherer populations of the region. He proposed a revolutionary idea. Perhaps it was the very act of coming together to build this temple that spurred the invention of agriculture. The need to feed the massive workforce required for such a project over many generations may have forced humanity to innovate, to organize, to domesticate plants and animals to settle down. In this new timeline, it was the desire for the sacred, the impulse to build, that created civilization. The temple came first.
It's a compelling and elegant theory, and it has reshaped academic thought. It provides a framework, a starting point to understand this stunning anomaly. And yet, when we move past the initial shock of its age and begin to scrutinize the details, the comfortable answers begin to fray, revealing a chasm of profound and unanswered questions. The mainstream view, as revolutionary as it is, struggles to account for the sheer impossibility of what stands on that hill. Let us begin with the most fundamental problem, the logistics. We are asked to believe that nomadic hunter-gatherers, with no knowledge of the wheel, no domesticated beasts of burden, and equipped with nothing more than flint and stone tools, accomplished feats of engineering that would be a challenge even today. The limestone pillars were quarried from pits located several hundred meters from the hilltop. Geologists have found a gargantuan, unfinished T-pillar still in the quarry. It is nearly 23 feet long and weighs an estimated 50 tons. 50 tons! How, precisely, did a pre-agricultural society with no known complex machinery hew a 50-ton block from solid bedrock with such precision? And if quarrying it was a mystery, transporting it is a paradox. How did they move these multi-ton monoliths uphill to the summit? The sheer manpower required is staggering. Estimates range from hundreds to over 1,000 people. But this wasn't a single act. The site was built over a period of at least 1,500 years, with new enclosures being built as older ones were deliberately and painstakingly buried. This implies a sustained, multi-generational effort, a shared vision and technical know-how passed down through centuries. How did scattered, nomadic groups constantly on the move in search of food
organize and sustain such a monumental, long-term project? Then there's the question of support. A workforce of that size needs to be fed. A hunter-gatherer society, by its very nature, lives on the brink. It does not generate significant food surpluses. The idea that the surrounding environment could support such a large non-food producing population for the extended periods required for construction simply strains credulity. It breaks the fundamental rules of pre-agricultural economics. The site itself shows no signs of permanent habitation. There are no hearths, no houses, no trash pits associated with a large settlement. The workers, it seems, came, built, and left. From where did they come? And who was feeding their families while they were away, quarrying and hauling stone? The paradox deepens when we look at the artistry. The carvings at Göbekli Tepe are not random doodles. They represent a complex symbolic system, a mythology carved in stone. The consistent style and recurring motifs across the entire site suggest a formal artistic tradition, likely taught and preserved by a class of specialized artisans or priests. But social specialization is a hallmark of settled, agricultural societies, not nomadic hunter-gatherers. Where did this class of specialists come from? Who trained them? The existence of such art implies a level of social and cultural complexity that is simply not supposed to exist in 9600 BCE. Every stone at Göbekli Tepe screams of a contradiction. The builders possessed the astronomical, engineering, and artistic knowledge of a settled civilization, yet they seemingly lacked the fundamental building block of one: agriculture. It's a square peg in the round hole of history. It feels less like the beginning of a story and more like a single surviving chapter from the middle of a book whose preceding pages have all been torn out. Faced with these glaring paradoxes, a growing number of researchers are looking beyond the conventional explanations, seeking answers not in what is known, but in what the stones themselves might be telling us. And what they suggest is a story far more dramatic than a simple gathering of hunters. It is a story written not just on the land, but in the stars. One of the most compelling alternative theories is that Göbekli Tepe was not just a temple, but a sophisticated astronomical observatory. This idea gained significant traction with the analysis of a particular pillar in enclosure D, known as Pillar 43, or the Vulture Stone. The pillar is covered in carvings: a scorpion, a bird, and most prominently, a vulture holding a sphere. Researchers Martin Sweatman and Dimitrios Chikritsis proposed a stunning hypothesis: that these animals are not just animals, they are constellations. The scorpion is Scorpio, the bird figure correlates with Sagittarius, and the other symbols align with other zodiacal signs. They argue that Pillar 43 is a celestial map, a snapshot of the sky at a very specific moment in time. Using computer simulations to wind back the stars, they found that the arrangement of constellations depicted on the pillar precisely matches the sky as it would have appeared over Göbekli Tepe in approximately 10,950 BCE, over 1,000 years before the temple was even built. But the story doesn't end there. The carvings also depict a headless man, a common symbol for death and disaster. The theory suggests the pillar is a memorial, a date stamp for a cataclysmic event that devastated the Earth. This date coincides perfectly with the onset of the Younger Dryas, a period of sudden, brutal climate change that plunged the world back into Ice Age conditions. Proponents of the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis suggest this climate shift was caused by a comet impact. Could Göbekli Tepe have been built by the survivors of this cataclysm?
Were they memorializing the day their world changed forever, encoding a message in stone and stars for future generations? This single pillar transforms the entire narrative. The builders are no longer simple hunters inventing religion. They become the inheritors of a sophisticated astronomical knowledge, a legacy system from a much older time. The temple becomes a mechanism for tracking the heavens, for calculating the slow wobble of the Earth's axis known as precession, a cycle that takes nearly 26,000 years to complete. To possess such knowledge implies millennia of careful, continuous observation. This is not something you invent overnight. This is ancient, ancestral wisdom. This opens the door to the most profound possibility of all. Perhaps the builders of Göbekli Tepe were not inventing this high culture from scratch. Perhaps they were trying to preserve it. Imagine a world before the Younger Dryas, a world with a stable, warmer climate where humanity had already developed a high level of sophistication. An ancient predecessor civilization lost to time and cataclysm. If such a culture existed and was nearly wiped out, what would the survivors do? They would gather. They would pool their remaining knowledge, and they would build a message in the most permanent medium they could manage, stone, to ensure that their wisdom, their story, and their warning would not be lost forever. In this light, Göbekli Tepe becomes a time capsule, an echo from a lost world. The builders were not primitive men taking their first steps towards civilization. They were the desperate heirs of a civilization that had already fallen.
The final and perhaps most baffling mystery of Göbekli Tepe lies not in its creation, but in its demise. Around 8000 BCE, after 1,500 years of continuous use and construction, the site was deliberately buried. The enclosures were filled methodically and carefully with millions of cubic feet of dirt, stone, and animal bones. Its creators intentionally entombed their sacred masterpiece, preserving it under a man-made hill for the next 10,000 years. Why? Why would a culture spend centuries building something so magnificent only to hide it from the world? Was its purpose fulfilled? Was it a final act of reverence, protecting the sacred ground from the profane world? Or was it a final act of desperation, hiding their ancestral knowledge before their own culture faded into the mists of prehistory? We have no answers. The intentional burial is the final, silent enigma of Göbekli Tepe. It is a full stop at the end of a sentence written in a language we no longer understand. Göbekli Tepe has given us a new, much earlier starting point for the story of civilization. It proves, beyond any doubt, that a stunningly sophisticated culture existed 12,000 years ago. It provides us with the when, but it leaves us grasping for the how. The mystery of its construction, the impossible logistics, and the advanced knowledge encoded in its stones suggests that even at this incredible age, we may not be looking at a beginning. We may be looking at an end. The stones of Göbekli Tepe are a testament to a level of genius that defies its place in history. But this monumental achievement, this mastery over stone, was not an isolated event. As we move forward through time, we find that this enigma of impossible construction doesn't disappear. Instead, it evolves. Thousands of years later, and thousands of miles away, on a desolate plateau high in the Andes, the mystery deepens and the stonework becomes even more precise, even more impossible. Our journey now takes us across the world and forward in time, from the dawn of civilization in the Old World to the roof of the New. We leave the sun-scorched hills of Anatolia and ascend 13,000 feet into the thin, crystalline air of the Bolivian Altiplano. This is a stark, desolate, and unforgiving landscape, a high-altitude desert nestled between the peaks of the Andes. It is a place that feels closer to the stars than to the earth, and it is here, near the shores of the sacred lake Titicaca, that we find a ruin so strange, so precise, so utterly alien in its execution, that it seems to have fallen from another world. This is not a towering temple or a grand fortress. It is a field of chaos, a scattered, broken collection of colossal stones that lie toppled and fragmented, as if some angry god hurled a celestial city to the ground. This is PUMA PUNKU, the gateway of the Puma. To walk among these ruins is a profoundly disorienting experience. It feels less like an archaeological site and more like the floor of a cosmic workshop. You are surrounded by enormous blocks of red sandstone and gray andesite, many weighing between 20 and 100 tons. But it is not their size that captures the imagination. It is their form. These are not rough-hewn megaliths. They are machined components. We see perfectly flat surfaces, polished to a glass-like sheen. We see impossibly sharp, true right angles and complex interlocking shapes. Most famously, we see the iconic H blocks, scores of them, all uniform in their basic dimensions, as if they came off an ancient assembly line. It looks like a giant, intricate construction set, a collection of standardized interlocking parts for a building of unimaginable complexity that was either never finished or was obliterated with shocking violence. The official archaeological narrative places PUMA PUNKU within the context of the Great Tiwanaku civilization, one of the most important cultures in the pre-Columbian Americas. Flourishing between 300 and 1000 CE, the Tiwanaku were contemporaries of the Maya and the ancestors of the Inca. Mainstream archaeology dates the monumental structures of PUMA PUNKU to around 500 to 600 CE, attributing their construction to this powerful and sophisticated Andean culture. According to this established view, the Tiwanaku people were master stonemasons who over generations developed techniques to work the incredibly hard stone of the region. The proposed toolkit was simple but effective. Heavy stone hammers, likely made of hematite, were used to pound the blocks into their rough shapes. For the finer details and precision cuts, archaeologists suggest the use of bronze or even copper chisels and plugs. The final smooth polish was supposedly achieved through a laborious process of grinding with sand and water. The immense blocks themselves, some weighing over 130 tons, are said to have been quarried miles away and transported using nothing more than log rollers, ropes, and the brute force of thousands of laborers. This is the accepted, peer-reviewed explanation for PUMA PUNKU, a testament to the patience, ingenuity, and sheer manpower of the Tiwanaku people, using the tools available to them in the Andean Bronze Age. It is a theory born of necessity, for it is the only one that fits the accepted timeline of cultural and technological development in the Americas. And yet, when we apply sincere, unbiased scrutiny to the stones themselves, this official story begins not just to unravel, but to shatter into 1,000 pieces. The physical evidence left in the stones does not whisper of bronze chisels and stone hammers. It screams of a technology that, according to our own historical timeline, simply should not exist. The first and perhaps most insurmountable problem is the material itself. The most intricate carvings, the sharpest angles, and the smoothest surfaces are found on blocks of gray andesite and diorite. On the Mohs scale of mineral hardness, where diamond is a 10 and talc is a 1. These stones rate between a 6 and a 7. This makes them incredibly hard and durable materials. Bronze, the hardest metal available to the Tiwanaku, rates only a 3 or 4 on the same scale. The idea that a softer tool can be used to create perfectly sharp, intricate geometric cuts in a much harder material defies the fundamental laws of physics. A bronze chisel would deform or blunt almost instantly upon striking andesite. While stone hammers could be used for crude shaping, they are utterly incapable of producing the razor-sharp internal corners and flawless flat planes we see everywhere at PUMA PUNKU. To suggest otherwise is akin to suggesting one could carve a granite countertop with a copper butter knife. And the precision. This is where the mystery deepens into a true paradox. We are not talking about impressive for its time precision. The flat surfaces are true to within fractions of a millimeter. The right angles are perfect 90-degree corners, as if measured by a machinist's square. We see complex, three-dimensional interlocking joints that would allow massive stones to slot together perfectly like pieces of a puzzle. And then there are the H blocks. Their uniformity is baffling. They appear to be standardized, interchangeable components. This level of standardization implies a system of measurement and a method of production far beyond simple hand tools. It implies templates, jigs, and a manufacturing mindset that we associate with the Industrial Revolution, not a pre-Incan culture. Perhaps most inexplicable of all are the drill holes. Many of the blocks are penetrated by small, perfectly circular holes that run for considerable lengths. Some blocks feature long, continuous grooves, only millimeters wide, with perfectly straight edges and consistent depth. One broken stone reveals a channel cut deep into its interior, a small square trough running perfectly parallel to the outer edges. How could such features be created with primitive tools? A stone or bronze drill might create a rough hole, but not one with the smooth, consistent bore we see here. And how does one carve a perfect, tiny channel deep inside a multi-ton block of one of the hardest stones on Earth? The evidence on the ground does not align with the proposed tools. It's as if we found a perfectly preserved Roman chariot, but upon inspection, discovered its engine was a fuel-injected V8. The object exists, but the technology required to create it is completely out of place and time. Finally, there is the logistical nightmare of transport. The largest single stone at the site, the Plataforma Litica, is a red sandstone platform weighing an astonishing 131 tons. The quarry for this sandstone is located nearly 10 miles away. The even harder andesite, used for the most complex blocks, comes from the shores of Lake Titicaca, a journey of over 55 miles. This journey would have crossed rivers, hills, and rugged terrain, all at an altitude where human physical exertion is 30% less efficient due to the lack of oxygen. The conventional theory of log rollers is problematic at best, as the altiplano is high above the natural tree line, making vast quantities of large, durable timber a scarce resource. Even with unlimited manpower, the sheer physics of moving a 131-ton block across such terrain with primitive means pushes the boundaries of credibility into the realm of fantasy.
When the official explanation creates more questions than answers, it is not just our right, but our intellectual duty to explore other possibilities. The stones of PUMA PUNKU demand a different line of inquiry, one that follows the evidence, no matter where it leads. What if the builders did not use stone hammers and bronze chisels? What if they possessed a form of technology that is now lost to us? This is not a baseless leap into science fiction. It is a logical deduction based on the observable facts. The precision cuts, the flat planes, and the complex interior geometry are all hallmarks of advanced machining. Engineers and master craftsmen who have examined the site, like the late Christopher Dunn, have argued that the finish and features are consistent with modern methods like milling machines, lathes, and even ultrasonic drilling. While no one is suggesting that Tiwanaku had electrical power tools, it is plausible they had mastered a different technological path. Could they have developed a form of sonic technology, using frequency and vibration to cut or even liquefy stone, allowing it to be shaped in molds before rehardening? Legends from the Andes speak of ancient priests who could move massive stones with the power of sound alone. While these are just legends, it is curious that they describe a solution to a problem that, according to the evidence at PUMA PUNKU, genuinely existed. Other theories speculate about lost chemical processes, the knowledge of a plant-based acidic solution that could soften stone, making it as pliable as clay for a short time. A second, and perhaps more profound alternative theory, is what can be called the inheritance hypothesis. What if the creators of the high-precision stonework at PUMA PUNKU were not the Tiwanaku people of 600 CE at all? What if PUMA PUNKU is vastly older, the relic of a true mother culture, a predecessor civilization lost in the depths of antiquity? In this scenario, the Tiwanaku people arrived on the Altiplano and found these miraculous otherworldly ruins already there. Recognizing them as sacred, they built their own capital city, Tiwanaku, adjacent to the site, attempting to emulate the divine stonework of the gods who came before. This would explain the stark difference in quality between the impossible precision of PUMA PUNKU and the still impressive but clearly more primitive stonework found in other parts of the Tiwanaku complex. The Tiwanaku were not the creators, they were the curators. They were living in the shadow of a forgotten Atlantis, a civilization whose technological signature was written in stone. This hypothesis aligns PUMA PUNKU with Göbekli Tepe, two data points from opposite ends of the Earth, both pointing to the existence of a highly sophisticated human presence deep in the prehistoric past. PUMA PUNKU confronts us with a stark choice. We can either believe that a Bronze Age culture, using only primitive tools and brute force, achieved a level of precision masonry that is difficult to replicate today, or we must accept that a piece of our human story, a piece involving a profoundly advanced understanding of science and technology, has been lost. The site is not a testament to labor, it is a testament to knowledge. Unlike the pyramids, where the mystery is the sheer scale of the labor, at PUMA PUNKU, the mystery is the impossible sophistication of the technology. The violent, chaotic state of the ruins adds a final tragic layer to the enigma. What great force could have toppled and scattered these colossal, interlocking stones? Theories range from a civil war to a foreign invasion, but many geologists point to evidence of a cataclysmic event, either a mega earthquake or, more compellingly, a massive flood. Some researchers suggest a comet impact or outburst from the sun melted Andean glaciers, sending a tidal wave of water and debris across the Altiplano, obliterating the city and jumbling its ruins like pebbles in a stream. Perhaps the site was destroyed by the same kind of cataclysm that the builders of Göbekli Tepe sought to memorialize. PUMA PUNKU is a technological ghost, a ruin that defies its place in time. The techniques used to shape its stones are a profound anomaly, and this anomaly is not unique. The skill of shaping impossibly hard materials with unerring precision is but one part of a larger Andean mystery. For just a few hundred miles away, in the heartland of the later Inca Empire, we find other sites where the mystery is not just in the cutting of the stone, but in the incomprehensible scale and the flawless, seamless fitting of stones so large they seem to have been placed by giants.
From the impossible industrial precision of PUMA PUNKU, we now journey north into the heart of the once mighty Inca Empire. Our destination is the magnificent city of Cusco in Peru, a place the Inca considered the navel of the world. High on a steep hill overlooking the city, guarding it like a silent stone predator, lies a structure that defies belief. It is a fortress, a temple, a testament to raw power etched into the very mountainside. This is Sacsayhuaman. As you approach it, its three massive, tiered, zigzagging walls, the mind struggles to process the scale. Photographs and videos do it no justice. You must stand at its base, dwarfed by its presence, to truly comprehend the undertaking. The walls rise in terraces for more than 60 feet, running for a length of nearly 2,000 feet. But it is the stones themselves that stop you in your tracks. They are behemoths, giants of gray andesite, some taller than a man, many weighing more than a modern battle tank. They are not uniform bricks or dressed blocks. They are wild, polygonal, and organic in shape. And yet, they are fitted together into a seamless, mortarless jigsaw puzzle of breathtaking complexity and perfection. It feels less like a wall built by men and more like a mountain range shaped by the hands of gods. According to the historical and archaeological consensus, Sacsayhuaman is the crowning achievement of the Inca Empire at its absolute zenith. Construction is said to have begun under the reign of the great emperor Pachacuti around the year 1440 and continued for nearly a century. It was conceived as a spiritual and military bastion for Cusco. Its zigzag
From the impossible industrial precision of PUMA PUNKU, we now journey north into the heart of the once mighty Inca Empire. Our destination is Cusco in Peru, a place the Inca considered the navel of the world. High on a steep hill overlooking the city, guarding it like a silent stone predator, lies a structure that defies belief. It is a fortress, a temple, a testament to raw power etched into the very mountainside. This is Sacsayhuaman. As you approach its three massive, tiered, zigzagging walls, the mind struggles to process the scale. Photographs and videos do it no justice. You must stand at its base, dwarfed by its presence, to truly comprehend the undertaking. The walls rise in terraces for more than 60 feet, running for a length of nearly 2,000 feet. But it is the stones themselves that stop you in your tracks. They are behemoths, giants of gray andesite, some taller than a man, many weighing more than a modern battle tank. They are not uniform bricks or dressed blocks. They are wild, polygonal, and organic in shape. And yet they are fitted together into a seamless, mortarless jigsaw puzzle of breathtaking complexity and perfection. It feels less like a wall built by men and more like a mountain range shaped by the hands of gods. According to the historical and archaeological consensus, Sacsayhuaman is the crowning achievement of the Inca Empire at its absolute zenith. Construction is said to have begun under the reign of the great emperor Pachacuti around the year 1440 and continued for nearly a century. It was conceived as a spiritual and military bastion for Cusco, its zigzag walls representing the teeth of the puma, a sacred animal to the Inca. The official explanation for its construction is a testament to the Inca's famed organizational power. It is believed that a workforce of 20,000 to 30,000 men was conscripted through the imperial labor system known as the mita.
These men, using little more than bronze tools, stone hammers, ropes, and earthen ramps, quarried the massive stones from sites miles away, dragged them up the mountainside, and painstakingly shaped them to fit.
The technique proposed for the flawless joinery is known as the scribe and pound method. Workers would hoist a massive, roughly shaped stone and suspend it over the one already in place. They would then trace the complex shape of the lower stone onto the upper one and chip away at it. Then they would repeatedly lower the stone, pound it into place to see where it rubbed, hoist it back up, and chip away at the high points again and again. This laborious process, repeated countless times for every single stone, is said to be how the Inca achieved their signature paper-thin joints. It is presented as a triumph of manpower, patience, and perseverance over technological limitation, a brute force solution to an epic engineering challenge. It is a plausible narrative for a people as organized and powerful as the Inca. It is the story you will read on the plaques at the site and in the university textbooks. But when you stand before a single stone, a stone like the one in the lowest tier, estimated to weigh between 120 and 200 tons, and you run your hand across its 12-angled surface, fitting flawlessly against its 6 colossal neighbors, the official story begins to feel less like a historical account and more like a fairy tale. Let us begin with the question of time. The Inca Empire, for all its glory, was a flash in the pan of history. It existed for roughly 100 years before being shattered by the Spanish conquest. Is it truly plausible that in this short window they were able to quarry, transport, shape, and assemble a structure of this magnitude using only the proposed primitive methods? Building a modern cathedral takes centuries. Sacsayhuaman is arguably a far greater challenge. The sheer man-hours required for the scribe and pound method on even one of the larger stones would be astronomical. To complete the entire complex in under a century seems wildly optimistic. The scribe and pound method itself collapses under the weight of the evidence. While this technique is viable for smaller, manageable stones, it becomes a physical absurdity when dealing with 100-ton megaliths. How does one carefully and repeatedly hoist, lower, and adjust a block the weight of a blue whale? A single misstep, a single uncontrolled drop would not just mark the stone, it would pulverize its own edges and the edges of the stones below, destroying the very precision you were trying to create. And we are not talking about fitting a single flat surface. Some of these stones are complex, three-dimensional puzzle pieces with 12, 13, or even 14 unique curving faces, all fitting perfectly against their neighbors. The level of spatial and engineering foresight required to pre-plan such a fit is beyond the scope of simple trial and error.
Then there is the logistical problem, which even the Spanish conquistadors who witnessed the final days of the Inca could not solve. The primary quarries for the largest andesite blocks are located on the other side of the valley, miles away, across rivers and up and down steep mountain slopes. The Spanish, with their horses and knowledge of European engineering, were utterly baffled. The chronicler Garcilaso de la Vega, born of Inca royalty, wrote that it seemed to be the work of some form of magic, and that the walls were built by demons rather than men. This is not the testimony of a modern theorist. This is the bewildered account of someone living in that time, who could not reconcile what they saw with the abilities they were told had built it. But the most damning evidence against the official story is written in the walls themselves. At Sacsayhuaman and throughout the Cusco Valley, we see two distinct and dramatically different styles of stonework. There is the megalithic, polygonal style of the main walls, immense, perfectly fitted, mortarless, and ancient-looking. And then, often built directly on top of these magnificent foundations, we see what is unmistakably Inca construction. Smaller, roughly shaped stones held together with crude clay mortar. The difference is as stark as night and day. Why would a culture capable of creating the perfect, massive foundations suddenly switch to a vastly inferior method for the upper levels? The logical conclusion is unavoidable. They didn't. We are looking at the work of two different builders from two different epochs. The Inca, it would seem, found these giant ancient walls already standing, and, recognizing their strategic and spiritual power, built their own temples and fortifications upon them. If the Inca were not the original builders of the megalithic foundations, then who was? And how did they achieve what seems, even to us, to be impossible? To answer this, we must once again venture into the realm of lost arts and forgotten sciences, guided by the evidence in the stones and the echoes of ancient legends.
One of the most persistent and intriguing theories revolves around a lost technology of stone softening. While it sounds like science fiction, local Andean legends are filled with stories of the ancients possessing knowledge of a liquid derived from a combination of specific plants that could render stone malleable and soft like clay or wet cement. In this scenario, the builders were not painstakingly chipping away at impossibly hard andesite. Instead, they would transport the rough-hewn blocks, coat them with this substance, and simply push them into place, allowing the stone to mold perfectly against its neighbors before rehardening. This theory, as fantastic as it sounds, elegantly solves many of the site's deepest mysteries. It explains the flawless organic fit of the multi-angled joints. It explains the odd, slightly bulging or pillowy appearance of many of the stones, which look less like they were carved and more like they were poured or molded. It also might explain the small, curious nubs and protrusions found on many of the blocks, which some researchers speculate were not handles for lifting, but perhaps points of application or processing related to this lost technology. This biological approach to architecture would be a science entirely alien to us, yet it would account for a structure that feels almost like it grew out of the mountainside.
Sacsayhuaman is a paradox. It is at once a work of brute cyclopean force and of delicate organic precision. It seems to defy the laws of engineering as we know them, whispering of a time when humanity had a different relationship with the stone of the earth. It is not just a fortress, it is a work of art, a technological statement left by a culture whose name is utterly unknown to us. When we place it alongside Göbekli Tepe and PUMA PUNKU, the picture of our lost past becomes clearer, yet infinitely more mysterious. We have evidence of a high culture existing at the dawn of the current age 12,000 years ago. We have evidence of a technology capable of industrial-level precision cutting on the high plains of Bolivia. And here, at Sacsayhuaman, we have evidence of an ability to manipulate and fit multi-hundred-ton stones with a flawless, seamless grace that seems to mock our modern arrogance. These are not isolated anomalies. They are chapters from the same lost book of human history. The monuments we have visited thus far have survived the ravages of time because they were built on high, dry ground. They stand as defiant testaments on mountaintops and arid plateaus. But what if other, equally magnificent structures were not so lucky? What if entire cities built with this same forgotten knowledge were located in places that are now lost to us, submerged by the cataclysmic rising waters that ended the last ice age? Our quest for the footprints of these phantoms now takes us from the peaks of the Andes down into the silent blue abyss of the Pacific Ocean. Our quest for the footprints of these phantoms now takes us from the peaks of the Andes down into the silent blue abyss of the Pacific Ocean. We travel to the far western edge of Japan, to the remote Ryukyu Islands. This is a place of typhoons and powerful, treacherous currents. It is here, just off the coast of the small island of Yonaguni, that a local diver in 1986, searching for new shark-watching spots, stumbled upon something that has fueled one of the most intense debates in modern archaeology. The descent is a journey into another world. As you leave the sunlit surface, the water shifts from turquoise to a deep, mesmerizing indigo. The sounds of the world above fade, replaced by the rhythmic hiss of your regulator and the quiet crackle of the reef. The pressure builds. Then, out of the deep blue gloom, a shape begins to resolve itself. It is not a natural reef. It is a monolithic, colossal structure of stone rising from the seabed nearly 100 feet below. It is a city of shadows, a silent, sunken citadel. This is the Yonaguni Monument. The main structure is immense, nearly the size of a football field. It is a vast, terraced pyramid with sheer faces, sharp angles, and what appeared to be enormous sweeping staircases. As you explore, the sense of artificiality is overwhelming. You see what looks like a wide road encircling the base, deep channels cut into the rock at perfect right angles, and towering stone pillars that seem to stand in silent, sentinel pairs. It feels with every fiber of your being like you are swimming through the ruins of a lost city, a Japanese Atlantis claimed by the sea millennia ago.
This powerful, intuitive feeling, however, runs directly into the cold, hard wall of scientific consensus. the overwhelming majority of mainstream geologists and archaeologists who have studied the evidence have concluded that the Yonaguni monument is not man-made at all. It is, they argue, an entirely natural geological formation.
Divers and researchers who support the artificial origin theory have mapped a host of specific features that are exceptionally difficult to explain through natural erosion alone. There is a feature known as the Loop Road, a 5-meter wide path that seems to follow the contours of the monument in a way that suggests a planned causeway. There are deep, narrow channels cut into the rock with remarkably straight sides, resembling drainage ditches or perhaps places where separate blocks were once joined. Most strikingly, there are features that appear to be distinct, separate carvings or sculptures. A formation known as the Turtle Rock bears a stunning resemblance to a giant sea turtle carved from the stone. Nearby, 2 enormous megaliths dubbed the Twin Pillars stand parallel to one another, rising vertically from the terrace in a way that seems entirely distinct from the surrounding geology. There is even evidence of what appears to be a separate block cut cleanly from the main structure in a quarry-like fashion, which would be impossible for erosion to achieve. While any one of these could be dismissed as pareidolia, the human tendency to see patterns in random shapes, the sheer number of them, all in one place, demands a more thorough explanation. Is it truly more scientific to believe in a dozen separate improbable geological coincidences than to entertain a single instance of human design? This question has been championed for decades by a small but dedicated group of researchers, most notably Dr. Masaaki Kimura, a marine geologist from the University of the Ryukyus. After spending hundreds of dives meticulously mapping every inch of the monument, Kimura has become convinced that it is what he calls a terramorphed structure. He believes that ancient people took a natural landform and extensively modified it, quarrying, cutting, and carving it into a vast ceremonial complex.
Kimura's research identifies not just random anomalies, but what he interprets as a planned architectural layout. He has mapped apparent walls, a triumphal arch, a stadium-like plaza, and even a large carved face, reminiscent of the Moai statues of Easter Island, staring out into the ocean. He points to small, repeated holes in the rock as evidence for post holes for wooden structures or spots where wedges were used to split the stone. If Kimura and his supporters are correct, the implications are staggering. We know from geological data that the last time this structure was above sea level was before the end of the last ice age. As the great ice sheets melted, global sea levels rose dramatically, submerging coastal areas around the world. For Yonaguni to have been carved by human hands, it must have been done before it was flooded by the sea. This dates its construction to at least 8,000 BCE, and more likely, closer to 10,000 BCE. This timeline places the builders of Yonaguni in the same enigmatic epoch as the creators of Göbekli Tepe. It suggests the existence of a highly advanced and organized culture in Ice Age Japan, a full 6,000 years before the first known civilizations are said to have emerged in the region. It points to a lost chapter of Asian history, a sophisticated maritime civilization that had the skill and vision to carve a mountain
into a monument. The existence of a drowned Ice Age structure in the Pacific inevitably brings to mind the great legends of a lost continent, a Pacific Atlantis often called Mu or Lemuria. For over a century, these stories have been relegated to the realm of esoteric fantasy. They speak of a great motherland, a vast civilization of navigators and stonemasons who were wiped out by a great flood, their cities sinking beneath the waves, leaving only scattered colonies on the islands of Polynesia and the coasts of Asia and the Americas.
While there is no scientific evidence that a continent-sized landmass ever sank in the Pacific, the legend may be a distorted cultural memory of something very real: the loss of vast coastal territories to the rising waters at the end of the Ice Age. All around the world, the places where ancient humans would have been most likely to build their cities, the resource-rich coastlines and river deltas, are now hundreds of feet underwater. Could Yonaguni be the first tangible piece of physical evidence for this drowned world? Is it the first real ruin from this lost Ice Age maritime civilization, the mother culture spoken of in myth? Ultimately, the Yonaguni monument remains a profound enigma, a geological Rorschach test. Do we see what is actually there, or do we see what we want to believe is there? Is it the greatest illusion that nature has ever created, a random assembly of fractures and erosion that our pattern-seeking brains have mistaken for a city? Or is it the most important underwater discovery in human history, the first and only proof of a civilization we never knew existed? The structures we have explored so far, from Göbekli Tepe to the Andes and now beneath the waves of Japan, were all monuments of ambition. They were built to face the sky, to map the stars, to stand proudly on the surface of the earth. But there is another kind of ancient architecture, one not born of pride or power, but of desperation and survival. What terror, what unimaginable threat would drive an entire civilization to turn its back on the sun, to abandon the surface world and to carve its entire existence deep into the cold, dark bedrock of the planet itself?
The monuments we have explored have been architectures of ambition, built to reach for the sky or to endure on the surface of the earth. We have dived to find citadels claimed by the sea. But there is another kind of ancient construction, one born not of reverence for the heavens, but perhaps of a profound terror of them. Our journey now takes us back to Turkey, to the strange and beautiful region of Cappadocia, a landscape of surreal fairy chimneys and honeycombed cliffs. It is here that we find a mystery, not of building up, but of digging down, a mystery born of a primal need to hide from a threat that drove an entire civilization to turn its back on the sun. The story of its rediscovery is the stuff of modern legend. In 1963, a man in the town of Derinkuyu was renovating his home. After knocking down a wall in his basement, he was met not with solid earth, but with a dark, gaping passage. Driven by curiosity, he lit a torch and stepped through the opening, out of his modern home and into the silent depths of the ancient world. He had not found a simple cave or a hidden cellar. He had stumbled upon a single doorway into a lost subterranean metropolis, a labyrinthine city carved deep into the bedrock of the earth, a place vast enough to shelter 20,000 souls. This is Derinkuyu, the city beneath the earth. To descend into Derinkuyu today is to enter an alien world of stone and shadow. A narrow, sloping passageway draws you down, away from the warmth and light of the surface. The air grows cool and still. The tunnels open into chambers, which branch into more tunnels, which descend to deeper levels. The sheer scale is bewildering. Archaeologists have so far uncovered 18 distinct levels, reaching a depth of nearly 280 feet, though some believe it may go even deeper. This was not a simple cave system. It was a fully functioning, self-sufficient city.
The mainstream historical and archaeological view is that Derinkuyu's origins lie with the Phrygians, an Indo-European people who controlled Anatolia in the 8th and 7th centuries BCE. It is believed they began the initial excavations, carving the first few levels out of the region's soft volcanic tuff, a rock formed from consolidated volcanic ash that is easy to carve but hardens on contact with air. According to this timeline, the city was greatly expanded and most famously used centuries later by the early Christian populations of the region. Between the 1st and 10th centuries CE, Cappadocia was a refuge for Christians fleeing Roman persecution and later raids during the Arab-Byzantine Wars. From this perspective, Derinkuyu was the ultimate defensive fortification. Its narrow passageways were designed to force invaders to proceed in single file, and at key junctions the defenders could roll massive circular stone doors weighing up to half a ton into place, sealing off entire sections of the city. Inside this sealed sanctuary, the population could hold out for months. The city included everything needed for survival: living quarters, stables for livestock, vast storage rooms, wells that tapped into the underground water table, and even communal spaces like churches, schools, and wineries. It was, according to this view, the most elaborate and sophisticated defensive hideout ever conceived. This explanation is logical, well documented, and certainly accounts for the city's use during the Christian era. It provides a clear and understandable motive for expanding such a complex. And yet, when we begin to examine the city's oldest and deepest layers, and consider the sheer, almost fanatical scale of the engineering, the idea that this was originally conceived as a temporary hideout from invading armies begins to feel profoundly inadequate. The design seems to hint at a much older, much deeper, and much more terrifying purpose. The first issue is one of proportionality. Derinkuyu is not a mere bunker. It is a metropolis. Housing 20,000 people plus their livestock and food supplies is an undertaking of immense complexity. The presence of large numbers of wine and oil presses suggests not just the storage of food, but its long-term industrial processing. This points towards a desire for true, long-term self-sufficiency, a design for a permanent or semi-permanent society living underground, not just a population of refugees hiding for a few weeks or months. It feels radically over-engineered for the problem of seasonal raids.
The parallels between the legendary Vara of the Zoroastrians and the physical reality of Derinkuyu are, to say the least, uncanny. Both are vast, multi-leveled underground shelters designed for long-term survival, complete with water, food, and space for both humans and animals, built to survive a world-ending catastrophe. The Zoroastrian texts are far older than the Christian use of Derinkuyu. Is it possible that this ancient legend holds the key to Derinkuyu's true, original purpose? Was it built not to hide from Roman soldiers, but to survive a dark, fatal winter, an ancient memory of a cataclysm like the Younger Dryas? This reframes the entire mystery. Derinkuyu ceases to be a fortress and becomes a prehistoric fallout shelter. A conventional army can be fought with walls and stone doors, but a threat from the sky is different. A nearby supernova, a catastrophic solar flare bathing the planet in radiation, or the impact winter following an asteroid or comet strike would all render the surface world uninhabitable. In such a scenario, the only rational response, the only way to survive, would be to go deep underground. Derinkuyu, with its complex ventilation and deep wells, is a near-perfect solution to precisely this kind of existential cosmic threat. It is an architecture of survival, built by a people who seem to have a profound reason to be terrified of the sky itself. Unlike the other monuments we have visited, Derinkuyu is not a statement of power or a map of the heavens. It is a monument to a great and abiding fear. It is a question turned inward, a silent stone testament to a period in human history so traumatic that the only viable solution was to bury an entire civilization. We can understand the what, an underground city, and we can understand the how by carving the soft volcanic tuff. But the true original why remains a terrifying and profound enigma. The sheer scale and sophistication of Derinkuyu suggests that its builders were not primitive people. It suggests they were intelligent, organized, and running from something that they believed could unmake their entire world. The existence of this subterranean world is a powerful hint that the history of our planet may contain episodes of cataclysm far more severe than our conventional histories allow. Derinkuyu is what survival looks like. But if this represents one response to a world in chaos, a retreat from the world into the safety of the earth, another, equally baffling response exists. Instead of hiding from the world, what if a culture chose to build its masterpiece in the most remote, isolated, and logistically impossible location on the planet? We now journey from the ultimate act of concealment and defense to an ultimate act of isolation. Our quest takes us to the middle of the vast Pacific Ocean, to a phantom city built on a coral reef, a place so difficult to reach and so impossibly constructed, it raises a completely different but equally profound question. Not just how did they build it, but why were they even there at all?
The true marvel and the deepest mystery of Derinkuyu is its ventilation system. The city is supplied with fresh air by more than 15,000 ventilation shafts, most only a few inches wide, which originate on the surface and descend to the lowest levels. Think of the engineering challenge. How does an Iron Age culture with no modern surveying equipment carve a perfectly vertical 280-foot deep shaft through solid rock to meet a specific chamber at the bottom? And not just one, but thousands of them, all perfectly placed to ensure a constant flow of fresh air throughout the entire 18-story complex. Without this system, a population of 20,000 would suffocate within days. This is not the work of desperate refugees digging a hideout. This is the work of master planners and engineers executing a brilliant and highly technical design. Furthermore, Derinkuyu is not an isolated phenomenon. It is merely the largest and most famous of over 200 underground cities that have been discovered in Cappadocia. Many of these, including the second largest city of Kaymakli, are connected to each other by underground tunnels that run for miles. We are not looking at a collection of separate forts. We are looking at a vast, interconnected subterranean kingdom. The question is no longer just, why did the people of Derinkuyu go underground? The question becomes, what threat was so pervasive and so long-lasting that an entire regional civilization chose to move its existence beneath the earth? Invading armies come and go. Derinkuyu feels like it was built to survive the end of the world. To find a threat that fits the scale of this underground sanctuary, we must look beyond the conventional conflicts of human history and into the realm of ancient myths and cosmic cycles. What kind of enemy makes the surface of the earth itself the battlefield? What drives a people to fear the sky? One of the startling clues comes not from Turkey, but from ancient Persia. The Vendidad, a key text of the Zoroastrian religion, tells the story of the great king Yima. The supreme god, Ahura Mazda, warns Yima that the world is about to be destroyed by a terrible, fatal winter, a devastating ice age that will wipe out all life on the surface. To preserve humanity, Ahura Mazda instructs Yima to build a vara, an underground enclosure. The description is astonishingly specific. It is to be a multi-level structure, illuminated by its own light, where the best of humanity, along with pairs of every animal and seeds for every plant, will be sheltered. They are to have their own water supply and live there until the cataclysm on the surface has passed.